happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, and today our segment, we take questions that are sent to Bakerpedia, and we take 10 minutes to answer your question. So without further ado, let's get started with the first question. So the first questions come from someone who's asking, let me go back. I need advice. I've seen a lot of recipes that calls for oat fiber. I cannot find oat fiber where I live in South Africa. Can I substitute oat fiber with psyllium husk? So in order to substitute psyllium husk, uh, uh, basically what I found, I did some research to look for it. It says 1 tablespoon of psyllium husk, which is very small, it's going to be about 5 grams, is equal to 14 tablespoons of oat bran. And I'm not, that's just what I found. I've never done it. So in order to do that, it's going to take more. I remember the absorption will be different. So you will have to ensure that, you regulate these. And one is psyllium husk is quite soluble, as versus the oat bran, you have probably some insoluble and soluble. So it's going to behave differently, but that's what I found that says, how do you substitute? And I would, good luck trying it. And I know psyllium husk is difficult to find in different areas in the world, but that should work with remember, it's oat bran, not just oat fiber, oat bran. So it's as they're milling it is the byproduct. So look with your local millers and for oat bran. So it's 14 times the amount. For every amount, you have to multiply by 14 in order to get that. All right. So now we're moving to the next question, which is, I would like to make cookies that are crisp on the outside and soft, gooey, chewy on the inside. They need to last for months, not days. When packed normally, I'm assuming ambient, the whole cookie becomes soft. Is there a way to prevent this? So right here, what you're seeing is basically water, your product getting to equilibrium. So once you have a cookie with different texture, whether the outer center is softer, basically over time, moisture will transfer, because you have different water activity. And as the different water activities within your product, whether you're putting chips, it's going to start moving around. So that texture to be crisp on the outside and soft on the center, it's impossible. Just think, I'll give you an example, a French baguette. When you buy a French baguette that is freshly made, the crust is crispy and the center is soft and creamy, but over time it changes. So that's what happens as products equilibrate in the packaging, and then it's difficult to do that. You can either do a soft, a crispy, a cookie, one texture, but I'm not aware that you can do both, due to the fact that water will transfer to different parts of the cookie based on equilibrium and based on a difference of water activity that you will find in your product. I hope it helps. And remember, if you need more help, you can always go to Bakerpedia, to the bakery resources, and find consultant where we can help you and guide you with your product. So thank you. And next question, is this necessary to have heat treated flour for cookies, or is this mandatory to have the baking process CPP according to the new regulation? So in order to have basically heat treated flour, so that means your flour has received the treatment, which again, it doesn't make it ready to heat or better to eat. So, it's being used in cookies and soft cookie dough. Some people will use the heat treated flour, but in terms of your process, I don't think it's necessary. Remember, the heat treated flour does not mean you can use it and eat it right away. It means it's an extra process within your flour that prevents any growth of anything, in your flour. So if you're making raw cookie dough that people can buy, it's a must. You will have to use it. But for any other products that you're using, there is a kill step coming out of the oven. So as long as you reach over 200 degrees, you are fine. So in the case of the Food Modernization Act has been around for more than 4 years. So it's really around traceability and PCQI training and processes more than safety. So I would check with some regulation of people who are very familiar with the regulation to really guide you through. Because as far as I know, and I don't know what product you make, but you do not need to have that. So as also heat treated flour cost more money. So, but that's a good question. So next question, dough absorption. How does water sprayed or dripped on a sheeted dough before cutting and proofing and then freezing, so that means you're not baking it, affect the shrinkage of my crust? So let's think for a second. So water, as it is, water is very inert. If you put water, it's not going to do anything. So if you put water on top of your crust, the shrinkage will come from either the way you're freezing, the way you're cooling. But water, as unless you said dripping water. So I've worked with systems where we're dripping water for sealing, but you're not talking about a pool of water. You're talking just a small amount of water. That small amount with either over time get absorbed within your product, but as water becomes frozen, it turns into crystal form. So basically, it will basically solidify. So, and it's immobile, so it shouldn't change. So your issue within the shrinkage of your crust, it's most likely, again, not knowing and just assumption, it's the way you're cooling it, and then the way you're freezing it, and also your formulation and the way you're mixing it, and do you put any dough relaxers, et cetera, to prevent that. But those are things that can easily be fixed. Again, as I mentioned earlier, feel free to go to the Bakerpedia bakery resources and find the help of consultant who will help you and guide you with your process. But a good question. So now for the last question, it's about non-diastatic malt, about bagels. What kind of non-diastatic malt do you recommend, and what baker's percent do you recommend for your for the bagels? So just to, there's diastatic and non-diastatic malt. For those who are not aware, the diastatic portion means enzyme active. So if they're diastatic, that means they still will change the product. Diastatic malt is active enzyme. They will help convert the starch into the sugar, and some bread or bagel recipes, they use the diastatic malt to speed the rising, to get basically to convert the starch into sugar quickly, so therefore feeding and more active. But non-diastatic malt is just used to add flavor and color. It's not enzyme active, and it's just to give you that malty note that people like, which is generally more pronounced than diastatic malt product. So in terms of what level, especially if it's non-diastatic, it's can start from, on baker's percent, you can go up to 1% to 0.5%. Is what are you trying to achieve in terms of flavor? Because remember, the non-diastatic malt is adding flavor and not really is going to help you with converting the starch into the sugar for your yeast. So I would, and which one to use, the level and of basically of malting or roasting in the non-diastatic varies greatly from one vendor to another. So the level is going to be basically specified by the vendor, saying, hey, start with that. Because I've played with some non-diastatic malt that were really, really bold in terms of flavor, very, very sort of darker notes. So you don't want to use much. So not knowing which vendor or which ingredient vendor you're going with, it's very difficult to tell you which one to use. But again, thank you again for all the great questions. I wish you a great Tuesday and a happy Tuesday and happy baking, and see you next week. Thank you.